cooking. So this is pretty simple, but it might kind of contradict things a little bit that we've been working on. But it was helpful that you guys clicked on the poll and actually gave me some direction there, because I was going to go a little bit more down the route of actually preparing meals. And this is why it's so important that you lads get involved in the group, because I want to make content and create education that is applicable and something that you actually need. So again, nice one, and I appreciate it. So fat loss weight fighting a family meal. This is the thing that everybody was clicking on and struggling with. So I'm going to go through some tactics, tips, keep it really simple to help navigate that situation. So it's looking like family meals, the biggest roadblock. So it's the chaos of feeding everyone and trying to stay on track. So let's go through it and let's fix it. So the thing that's going to get in the way is, or some of the things that can get in the way, should I say, is kids wanting different foods. You can end up cooking 2 or 3 different meals. Your partner isn't actually on the same path as you. She or he isn't tracking. And then, excuse me, you're left with no time or energy for yourself. So it's turning that evening meal into a bit of a chaotic period of time. So what we need to think about here is we don't need a new plan. We just need a better system to work around that. Okay. So there's a few things that we want to look at around eating out as well. So a couple of people touched on this in the feedback, and we've been over this quite a few times. So I'm not going to harp on too much in this section, but when we're eating out, we've got to keep things pretty simple, but most importantly, go into the meal out prepared. If we're going to it unprepared and we already make a decision that that's going to be like an off evening or an off meal, then calories consumed are going to be through the roof. And most importantly, or more importantly, there can be a negative kind of snowball effect from that. So if you're going into a meal out with the mindset of, well, I don't actually have any idea how to approach this, so essentially hit the fuck it button, well, then you can wake up the next day, blood sugars are going to be all over the place if you massively overeat, appetite could be higher, and then it's like, well, yesterday was crap, I might as well just carry on today. And that one off plan meal can turn into 1, 2, or 3 days completely off plan. And there's a massive difference in the potential impact or negative impact of one meal versus 2 or 3 days where you've just kind of hit the fuck it button and thrown the towel in. So massive difference between them two things. So when we're going to eat out, it's really simple, right? What we've got to do is make our best efforts to get an understanding of how many calories are on the menu, or what's on the menu and how many calories that's going to cost, right? Most menus will have calories on them now. I think more and more you'll find picking up and adding in. I'm pretty sure a little while ago I heard that it was like a legal obligation. Obviously, not all restaurants are sticking to that. But at least looking at the menu in advance and picking something that is essentially just using some common sense when picking the meal. So there's going to be a massive difference between a large pizza and the sea bass and potatoes, for example. But essentially, go into it and look at the menu and get a rough idea of what is going to be closest to the calories that you're shooting for. All right. Go into it with an approach of either having a starter or a dessert, or depending on what that dessert is, maybe share the dessert. Never have 3 courses. A starter and a main, or a main and sharing the dessert, you can quite easily factor that in. If you have, you know, no kind of no caution of how many calories you're consuming, and you go for 3 starter, main, and dessert, really easy to consume a lot of calories in one sitting. All right. So starter or dessert, pick off the menu, make an educated decision. Try and pick meals that have got a high protein count. If you go for a high protein count meal, you're going to manage your appetite much easier. If you go for just like a straight carbohydrate based meal, appetite's going to be much higher. That can then lead into a big dessert and then more and more eating in the evening and then even the day after as well. So make sure when you're selecting something off the menu, it is a protein dominant meal. So your steaks, your chicken dishes, fish dishes. That way you've covered your protein count. You're going to manage appetite much easier and it'll keep overall calorie consumption down. And then I've just put on here, eat a lighter lunch during the day to make space. We all know how to bank calories now at this point. Sometimes just eating a lighter lunch on the day will be suffice. If it is, and this is why looking at the menu is so important, if it's going to be a really high calorie consumption meal, making room for that for a few days in the run up to the event is going to make sense. So cutting back some calories from either carbohydrates or fat. So for example, if you was having eggs on a bagel for breakfast, take half or a full bagel away for 2 or 3 days. Straight away there, you've banked up anywhere between 300 and 600, 700 calories. And then you've got them extra calories to play around with. It's excess spending money for that meal out. And again, keep repeating myself, but looking at the menu in advance is going to help you make these decisions. You might look at the menu, it might be all labeled up with the right amount of calories, and you can just pick 2 choices off that menu and know that you're only going to need an extra 300 or 400 calories for that day. Okay, so that's when you just have a lighter lunch or you skip out one of your snack meals. But going in prepared, making a smart decision is pretty much all that's required to help navigate a meal out. If you're going on a meal out, just kind of doing whatever you want, that's where things can go a little bit wayward when it comes to calorie consumption. And it's very easy to have a good week and have one really high calorie day and you just balance yourself out for the week. Because as we know, we understand at this point that being in a calorie deficit is what's going to drive fat loss. And we can eradicate 5 or 6 days worth of a calorie deficit with one big binge session or one big overconsumption of calories. So just don't wing it, go into it prepared, and then we've got control, can enjoy the meal out most importantly, eat some off-plan foods, and not be worrying about it at all because it's factored in, it's balanced out, and you know you're going to still make great progress that week. But on to the main topic, the thing that people are struggling with at the moment, and it is tricky. Now, if your kids want to eat turkey dinosaurs, like my little girl does, absolutely loves one, that's the chicken dinosaurs, but she absolutely loves them. I can't eat that same meal that she's eating. So sometimes there's going to be no way around making 2 lots of meals, depending on the age of your child, depending on the preferences and tastes. Some kids are really fussy eaters. Again, my little girl's incredibly fussy eater. So there's no way we're all going to eat the exact same meal. So accepting that, if that is your circumstance, is first protocol. If they're little, chances are you're going to have to prep them something different. But family meals, if you've got older kids, and especially when we're looking at partners, we need to try and find some middle ground here and make sure that we're eating meals that are aligned with our goals and aligned with our targets, but something that the missus is going to enjoy. Okay. Most blokes, we can be pretty repetitive. It doesn't bother us for very long. And partners, if they're not on a diet, if they're not trying to make progress, they're not trying to drop body fat, they're going to get pretty pissed off pretty quick. So I've listed off some examples of the kind of meals that we can easily factor in. But before I go into the meals themselves, I think it's important to go into preparing these meals knowing that you can't be exactly to the gram. Okay, there's going to be a little bit of wriggle room. You might be slightly over one day, you might be slightly under the next day. If we control the controllables, we can enjoy meals with our family, still make great progress, and not have to be overthinking it all the time. But we have to apply some common sense when we're preparing meals. So, for example, meals like tacos, fajitas, spaghetti bolognese, stir fries, burgers with oven chips, standard chicken and veg meal using like a Maggie's bag of some kind. Having wraps, having a pizza night, slow cooker meals are incredible. But essentially what we want to look at, and this may, I know it does in my house, cause a little bit of traction when I'm coming in and leaning over the missus and barcode scanning things, but It is actually very simple and easy to do if we put the effort into doing it. As long as we understand the total amount of calories that are going into a batch cooked meal. So if there's 4 people sitting down for a meal and we've got a rough gauge on what's gone in total, well, then we can portion off what we need. Okay, so just going to keep it real simple maths, and let's use spaghetti bolognese for an example. Spaghetti bolognese, you've chucked 300 grams of mince in, a couple of 100 grams of pasta. You've used a spaghetti bolognese sauce off the shelf. You've scanned that in. You've got a rough gauge on it. Total amount of calories that have gone into that meal is 1,000 calories. Your calorie content for that meal is 500 calories. So it's probably not going to work out too great with the family, but you would know straight away you're going to need about half of everything that's coming out of both of them pots. Okay. So using your skill that you should now have built of what a portion size looks like. So, for example, if you are eating rice with your meals, pasta, it's quite a close swap when we're looking at calories. So the amount of rice that you see on your plate, you should see roughly the same amount of pasta on your plate. Okay, so potatoes, similar in volume size. Again, you see a portion of rice on your plate, the potato portion should be a similar amount on the plate. And essentially using common sense and making sure that you're not loading that plate up to the hilts. That's how we can get a rough gauge on how many calories are coming out of a batch cooked meal. So understanding how much has gone in total, and then roughly how much of that total amount you're going to need on your plate to hit your calorie count. All this is going to mean is a little bit of tracking, just checking how much chicken's gone in or how much mince has gone in, pasta, and what the sauce has come to. And then essentially serve yourself first. So make sure you've looked at the total amount and you've took off whatever it might be. I gave a bad example of half of a 4-person meal, but maybe you need a third of what's in the pan. You take your third out and you know you're roughly going to be there. And then with the examples of the meals, you're leaning into here, high protein meals. Okay, so if you're eating a high protein meal, you're going to be way more likely to manage appetite. So you're hitting your protein target, but you're also managing your appetite as well. So it's harder to overeat. So essentially, picking things, and like I'll give some examples on this list here, picking some ideas and some meals that you can see the majority of the family eating together, looking at how many calories are going in total, and then taking a portion size that's relevant to the amount of calories you need on your plate. And then also just applying your visual skill of being able to understand what a portion looks like. Like pretty much everybody right now should know what 200 grams of lean meat looks like on a plate. You should know what a few 100 grams of white potato looks like on a plate. A lot of people may fall into the trap in these instances where they know it can't be perfect. So, well, fuck it, it's not perfect. It's not exactly to the gram. I'll just do whatever. And they might have 2 plates, 3 plates, or just loading the plate up to the hilts. Using some portion control, understanding roughly how many calories have gone into the meal, and then selecting things that are easier to track than others is going to give you a rough gauge on what you need to be hitting on a day-to-day basis. And yes, this isn't perfect, but it is way better than just not trying at all, over consuming on calories because portion sizes are too big, paying no mind to how much protein's in the meal, so missing out on your protein target each day. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it's way better than the trap that a lot of people fall into and think, well, if it's not perfect, well, fuck it, I'll just do whatever. Okay. So being a little bit more flexible, being a little bit more malleable with, yes, the calories might be off, the portions might not quite be correct, but I know I'm somewhere near to where I need to be. So little added one here. It's one of my personal favorites, pizza night. So you can buy a vegetable pizza for about 400 or 500 calories that can cost you for a full pizza. And then all you need to do then is you need to just add some extra lean meat on top of that. So it could be pizza night with the family. They're all having whatever it might be. Even if you're buying it in, you can still have pizza with the family. You're just preparing your own pizza. Or if you're buying a selection of like frozen pizzas, they can be having the higher calorie ones. You can create your own. And this things like this works perfectly.
I'll
Burgers.
John, I've got a high protein pizza recipe I'll send over later.
Oh, mate, my
Where
guy. Fire it in.
basically the dough's made out of self-raising flour and Greek yogurt.
Nice. I like
So
it.
it's like you use not percent fat Greek yogurt in the dough, then it's really good. So I'll send it over in the chat after this.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Class. So when we're looking at these meal options, we can see there that we've got quite a wide variety. I know in our household, we've probably only got a staple of about 3 or 4 meals that go on repeat, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in most households. But if you look across this menu, you can find pretty much, you've got to be able to find 3 meals that you could agree to on a family. We've got cottage pie, slow cooker meals are incredible in winter as well. Pizza nights, wraps, burgers and chips, stir fries, and noodles. And some meals are going to be much easier than others to actually track. So a spaghetti bolognese cooked in batch, that's where you're going to have to look at the total amount of calories that have gone in and then get your portion size. Something like the pizza night, incredibly easy to track. Burgers and oven chips, again, incredibly easy to track. You've got your burger, you've got a bun, and you've got some homemade chips or oven chips if you choose to spend the calories on them. Chicken and veg, again, easy to track. So it's mostly about finding things that you're all going to eat together and then applying them simple rules of just understanding what's going in from a calorie perspective and making sure the portion control is correct. Or if it can be tracked in individual items, just going ahead and tracking the meal. So these aren't meals that you're going to find on your plan regularly, but it doesn't mean that they're off plan. It doesn't mean that they can't be eaten. The more often you can be accurate, the better, the faster the results. But we've got to think about longevity. We've got to think about overall consistency and being able to take a done's better than perfect approach for a long time. Because getting in shape, it does not happen overnight. It takes time. And if every time you're eating with a family, you're going way over on the calories or way under on the calories or not getting any protein in, that's going to cause problems. That's going to slow down progress. So simple additions to what I've just been touching on there with how to track without losing your head. And that's weigh things dry. So like I was saying, I use the spaghetti bolognese as an example. You can just see how much total pasta's gone into that meal before you've cooked it. Chuck it in. Use the barcode scanners for anything packaged. So if you're using a package, I'm just going to stay on spaghetti bolognese to keep it easy for myself. If you are creating spaghetti bolognese, you can scan the sauce in. If you're adding some cheese on top of the meal, you can scan the cheese. The things to watch out for, and especially if other people are cooking, and it's not a hard conversation to have, is just making sure that there's not too much oil and fats going into meals. So these are things that will just become invisible inside a spaghetti bolognese, but will rack up the calories. And if you're not the one cooking, you may just need to have the conversation about just being mindful about how much oil goes into the meal. Because, like I said earlier, if your partner's not tracking, they're not on a diet, they've not got any fat loss goals, and they like having a lot of olive oil in the meal, they're just going to whack it in. If they've got no clue, if you're explaining that racks up to a lot of calories and it could push you over your targets and hinder your progress, it's not going to be a hard conversation. It's not going to be hard to get somebody to agree to just put less oil in the meal. And then, yeah, estimate in the portions. Okay, so if we can use a 2 out of 3 rule, so if you can track protein and carbs, and know that there's not too many fats going in the meal, if the other little add-ons, the little extras like sauces and things like that, as long as you're not going nuts with the actual portion size, if we can take a 2 out of 3 rule, then we're in a good spot. So essentially, we've got a plan for eating out. Just don't wing it. Apply some common sense to what you're picking off the menu. Prepare by understanding how many calories you're going to need to consume or need to spend and making room for it. And then making meals trackable. So picking things that are going to be easier to track. And then thinking about the big rocks. So tracking your protein, tracking your carbs, trying to make sure not too many fats are going into the meal. And then not worrying too much about the finer details that you can't control. And then also, I've added this on keeping your family in the loop. There's so many blokes that will fall into a trap of just not actually explaining to the partners, especially, and explaining to the other members of the family what you're actually doing and why you're trying to do it. Kind of blokes with quite insular, will just head down, crack on, don't want to say anything to anyone. But if you was to be having to eat slightly different at the dinner table to everybody else, and nobody's got a clue what your intentions behind your goals are, it's going to look a little bit odd. You could end up getting a little bit of earache off the kids and the missus. If everyone's really clear that you're here to make a positive change to your health, your energy, the way you're looking, the way you're feeling, and you understand that that's then going to have a knock-on impact on how you are to be around, how positive you are, how much you have actually got to give back to the family, I guarantee everybody's going to be getting on board. So there's going to be no awkwardness if you do have to eat slightly different. There's going to be no awkwardness if you do have to kind of tweak the type of meals that you're eating together as a family. And if you know, put some effort in, make sure that the meals are enjoyable. You're not just slapping everyone a plain chicken breast and some broccoli on a plate. Then getting people on board, getting people to be behind you and be with you and be supporting you is actually going to be way easier if you've not had them conversations than you think. Okay, so making sure you're keeping everybody clear on why you're here, what you're trying to achieve, and how that's going to impact you. And most importantly, if you are a family man, how it's going to impact them as well in a positive way. So, nice, short and sweet one tonight. I hope that this has been helpful. Obviously, a lot of people clicked on the poll. I'd love it if you could give some feedback after watching it and just let me know. Have I left any gaps? Have I left any grey areas? I want to make sure everything is absolutely crystal clear and is easy to implement as possible. I've now got a tendency to go off on a little bit of a tangent and ramble at times. So let me know after you've watched it back, did this fix the problem? Do you now know what to do going forward? And if not, ask me the questions, tell me what grey areas I've left, and I will fill them in for you.